Wairākau, he kupu hopea, maybe that's a kupu ho for some of you. Wairākau, te rate kupu mo te compost. No mai hara mai, really, really grateful that there's plenty of you here today. Oh, maybe I'll talk a bit more about my background. Okay, so I've been working for Para Kore for 4 or 5 months, pretty fresh here in Te Awa Kairangi, working with colleges and marae and a kohanga and building the rōpū that we work with here. I've also been working for Common Unity for a year and a bit, where most of my practical learnings have come from in the Māora. I've learned a lot from Hannah Swartz, who uses like organic permadynamic practices. But yeah, my mum is also an amazing grower and have learned lots from her. I love compost. It's something that I found really intrigues me. That nerdy side, I really enjoy, and seeing the result once you've made beautiful soil just makes my heart sing. Yeah, so I'll be giving more of a practical kōrero, Wairākau 101, and Jessica is going to take us into more of the theoretical and political, hopefully, about why we do what we do. Why the importance of mahi one, the importance of making soil, to me is because it connects me to our atua. It helps me honor them, and I'm on my reo reclamation journey for about 8 years now, and I just feel like this is the next step to really deepen my understanding of te ao Māori, of our taiao, and of our atua. It's a place where I feel the most tau. My garden is a great sense of like almost meditational and spiritual practice for me to connect with hine ahuone and my tupuna and their knowledge. Yeah, there's so much. There is so much. Does anyone have any questions or any kōrero to share? Just unmute yourself and share. Yeah. Okay.
But I was just wondering if this is going to be recorded. I have another Zoom that I have to attend during this time, but I would really, really love to be able to listen to what you have to share.
Yeah, kia ora. We are recording right now, so hopefully we'll have a think about the best way to share this kōrero on various platforms. Just keep tuned. Just check in with our Facebook or our Instagram page. Different methods depending on your needs. There's so many different ways that you can deal with your food waste or your green waste. It depends entirely on how many people in your household or in your organization, your kura or kohana, and what is the majority of your waste. Do you have a lot of meat waste and bone waste, and do you have a lot of gardening waste? It all depends on what you're looking for, but the main thing that you're trying to do is to repurpose materials to help us grow high nutritious fruits and veggies. Yeah, one way that I sometimes I've been sorry, let me re-channel that thought. One way you can deal with your waste is through burning bones and things like that, but like I said, there's better ways to recycle that nutrition. Is anyone an expert in bokashi bins on this Zoom? Because bokashi is not something that I've personally used.
we do a bit of bokashi in our whare. That's our solution, just because of the nature of our setup, not having access to sort of space, I guess, for a compost and to be able to manage.
Yeah. It's a good urban solution, bokashi, but we'll actually get into that a little bit later. In general, the things that you're going to want to pop in your compost are the correct ratio of brown things and green things, and we'll get into that to discuss what type of materials make up a layer or a green layer. Depending on whether you're using inoculants of anaerobic bacteria, which is something we'll also get into later, you might need to turn the compost, so the compost does need oxygen. You're gonna want it in a sunny spot so that it gets warmed by the sun and helps the microbes within the compost and that decompositioning stage to thrive. And you want it wet, not super soggy, but especially if you're constructing your compost in summer, you're going to want to give it a little bit of water, and soil life is hopefully going to be attracted automatically if you create the right conditions. So really important that you have contact with the soil, unless you're using a bokashi or a worm farm, which is we'll get into later. There's just so many different ways that we can decompose our para. Nā mea paraone. These are the things that make up a brown layer. I try and remember this as your dry layer, and you're wanting about a 60-40 ratio on that. And take my kōrero not as this is what you do to have successful compost. This is just some of my observations, and they will need tweaking. But you've got to start somewhere. If you're someone who hasn't started your compost, just get going and take a little bit of this information, but try not to get overwhelmed because there is a lot. So things that are brown are carbonous. They create a carbon layer, and we want a good balance of carbon and nitrogen in our soil. Paper towels are good to break down. Personally, I don't put that in my compost. That then goes on my mara kai, but really important that we break down our paper towels instead of letting them go to landfill. Yeah, newspaper is good, and cardboard is really good for the compost. I have often observed worms really thriving and getting in between the layers of compost of cardboard. But really, really important, take the tape off and not any cardboards that have shiny layers on them, because again, plastic, microplastic pollution, yuck, don't want that anywhere near my kai. Lawn clippings, once they've been sat there for a while and turned brown, will be rich and will be more carbonous. But if they've been freshly cut, they're going to be a green layer, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Yeah, small little twigs and branches, dry leaves is always good to go. Leaf collecting in autumn, winter time, because they'll make a great layer. Another thing we've also used at Common Unity in our mara is we get coffee chaff from a local roastery, which is kind of like the flaky bits that come off the coffee beans that they roast, and diverting that from landfill. That's been really helpful. I know of a mate who also gets from a cardboard factory here in the hut. They're like kind of fluffy off-cut type bits. So the smaller you can get what you're putting in your compost, the better. if you're putting in tree prunings and twigs and things like that, make sure you have a good pair of secateurs and cut it down, because you're helping the microbes and you're helping the worms give them a kickstart, because they're not going to eat a whole, be able to break down a whole log or big fat twigs. Yeah, and then moving on to our layer. Yeah, burying my bones. I've been only just recently got out in the mara and dug a deep enough hole to put all my meat bones in, because I don't obviously want to put that anywhere near my Wairākau. Could be really dangerous pathogens and germs that you're creating if you do. Although I have heard that you can put bones in a bokashi. Can anyone speak to that? Also,
See you in the morning.
just wondering if someone could help find that person who's not on mute. Oh, I think everyone's just unmuted themselves. Could everyone check that they're on mute? Kilda.
Lani, there's lots of comments coming through as well.
Yeah. Oh, Kahurangi, would you read out some, because I can't see them and the slide at the same time. I've not done a screen sharing before. Do you want to read them out to me?
Yes, sorry, I was just reading whilst on mute. We've got bokashi as an urban composting friend for odour control of food scraps easily. And Maddie here, bokashi great for food scraps, not suitable for a worm farm, onion skins, etc. Aroha Nui West, loving this, amazing mahi Lani. And then if you have, Janine, if you have large logs, they're best at the bottom of the huggle culture style mara. And yes, bones can go on bokashi. And is that bucket to stop animals from digging it up?
Yes.
From test.
Oh, I can't hear. Cutting out. Yeah, so it doesn't need to be a bucket, just it was the only thing that was big enough to cover the hole and put a rock on it, because they, rats and possums dig, and I just made sure that it was really deep. Yeah. Is there anything else, Kahurangi? How are we going for time? Komatu. Yeah, even a big plank or something that you can pop down makes me and is decreasing the waste going to landfill quite drastically in our little whare. Yeah, bokashi. So bokashi, for those of you who haven't used this before, it's a powder with microbial activity, is that correct? With microbes in that help kickstart the fermentation process for your compost. Oh, I forgot to mention this earlier. So we compost our food scraps and other para, because through that process we help that nutrients become available to plants. And so unless veggie scraps or whatever have been through unless they've been turned into micro poos or into worm poos, the nutrients is not accessible to plants. So the more diverse activity of microbes that we can get in our compost, the richer our soil is going to be for our tipu kai. So the burying of my bones is not for soil creating. That's just me trying to deal with my waste and not send it to landfill where it's going to turn toxic and turn into leachate. and heaps of you might have, you know someone who has pigs or chickens. That's an awesome way to divert food waste from landfill. But that's not mahi o neone, that's not creating soil that we need for our mara, because we're also losing our soil, our topsoil, very fast in the world, and it's terrifying, because without it we won't be able to grow. So this is magic work to me. Anywho, back on track. Tumblers. Somebody mentioned tumblers earlier. I've never seen one in use, but it's similar to me. My whakaaro is it's similar to a bakashi because it's enclosed, it's pretty rat proof, and it's smell proof. That's another plus for the bakashi, because you put it in a bucket that's sealed. You sprinkle a little bit of the powder of the microbes on top, and it'll start fermenting. What I've heard people also do is they will kickstart their food waste in bakashi for, I don't know, a couple weeks, a couple months, and then take it out into a layered compost. But someone also did just mention that it's not good for a worm farm, so don't pop it in your worm farm. I wanted to talk about, I don't know if I have a slide for this. I wanted to talk about verma versus therma decomposition of nutrients. So verma is obviously worms doing the work, and therma is where you're trying to get your compost pile up to a temperature where there's lots of, the temperature rises because there's lots of microbial activities. They're like having a little party and getting all hot and sweaty. That's why, and that's what helps break that type of compost down. And then you've got verma, where you encourage happy, healthy worms to break down the kai for you. I'm assuming there will be microbes present in a worm farm too, but the most of the work is done by worms, and it'll be potent stuff. Yes, worm farm, potent stuff. That one on the left is my flash, what are they called? Oh jeepers, I forgot what they're called. Tony, what are they called again? Would you remind me?
Hungry bins, which was a beautiful gift from Para Kore. Thank you, Tony. I love it. It has a really beautiful filtering system, but they're expensive. Like I would never have been purchased this, but it's good to have to show people, and when I'm bringing other worms to kura and kickstarting their worm farm. But you can see that first layer is where you pop your kai, and then where the worms live, and the bottom layer has a filtering system which gives me my precious worm juice, which I dilute about 1 litre of worm juice to 1 litre of water, kind of similar like a feed, and I pop that on my mara. I make sure that I don't give my worms onions and lemons or any citrus. It kills them. It makes them really unhappy. So we try and tell people your worm farm is like your pets, and you've got to care for them. You've got to check in with them every now and then and see how they're doing, and make sure they're getting a bit of rest as well. I've just kind of retired mine maybe for a month or two, and using some other options to deal with my food waste so that they...
Patai, Lani.
I'm
having trouble with my hungry bin. I'm finding that like it gets too compacted, and like then the worms just, they go migrate because they're not happy.
Yeah.
Like, how are you keeping enough air in it?
Does it look kind of soggy and wet?
It can do, yes.
Yeah, so then you're probably putting too much of that nitrogen, the green layer, like we talked about earlier, in, and I suggest ripping up some cardboard, or finding wood chip is all right, but it just got to make sure that it's not treated wood chips, and that it's quite fine.
Can I jump in too, Lani?
Yeah.
And say that I heard yesterday that hungry bins have to actually be quite well aerated, like the same as a compost.
Yeah.
You know those? Have you ever seen those corkscrew things you can get from Mitre 10 that you use to aerate your compost? Apparently, if you use that as a hungry bin, it really helps stop that solid mass like creating down the bottom.
Yes. Yeah, just I go in every now and then, even with a stick, and just kind of have a look around and see how they're going. And another thing that Hannah used to teach me to do is sprinkle lime in them, because it lowers the pH, the acidity, for them. They don't like. That's probably what it is. It's probably too acidic if it's like soggy and wet. Does anyone know about lime in worm farms? Why that's good? I just know that we do it, but I don't know why. It helps.
The alkaline environment, so that's what the lime does. Also, I think while at the bottom of the hungry bin, it's the castings that you need to get rid of. So I think there's a manual that comes with the hungry bin, and then it speaks about emptying the castings. So just have a read over that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't have the manual because I got it from an op shop. But
Cool.
I know, such a good score. Yeah, I'll give it a try because I've been using you know, the like pigtail things that you can get for your dog to like you know, where you screw it into the ground and you could put your Coodie's leash to it. So I've been using that to turn my compost instead of the compost turner from Bunnings. So I'll give that a go. And I've noticed as well, like, what's good is my worm population is just taking off in there. I have so many worms in there. But also I'm having like lots of little tiny white mites or somethings in there. I don't know if it's bad or not, but there's heaps of worms.
Well, those are actually baby worms, I'm pretty sure. I think those are baby worms. They look like little maggots, but they're very white and very, very skinny at the beginning. So have a peep at them over the next couple of days and see how they grow, and they'll slowly turn pink.
Oh no, they're not those ones. They're like little, because they have legs and I see them moving around.
Oh, no.
Oh, thank you, Takawa, ngamihi.
Also, your worm farm will self-regulate itself, so it will never ever overpopulate.
Yeah, if you're not giving them enough, they'll slowly die. Yeah, and another.
Hey, Lani.
Yeah.
Those white ones are called pot worms, and to get rid of them, you put a slice of white bread in your worm farm. And then the pot worms all converge on the bread, and then you remove the bread with the pot worms and throw it away because you don't want them in your worm farm.
Yeah, good one. There you go, Susie. Brilliant. Thank you, Maddie, for that. Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's how we learn together, eh? Yeah, a bathtub, chuck a lid on it, make it rodent-proof. And you even have a draining hole for your worm juice is a brilliant alternative to a hungry bin. Any kind of vessel with a draining hole at the bottom can be turned into a worm farm, and the ups for a worm farm is that they are rodent proof as long as you have a lid. That's something that people often struggle with when trying to convince schools or councils wherever to install composting stations. Everyone's always worried about rats, so this is one way that we can control that, but it's also a little bit inevitable, having rats and rodents. Just to put rodent traps around the place would be good. Completely skipped this one. There we go. I wanted to talk about rotation versus no-till static compost piles. Yeah, we've had lots of chat about aeration and rotation, and yes, compost does need the right amount of airflow, otherwise it'll become anaerobic and icky. There's a more scientific term for it surely, but that's all I know. So there's bay composts that you can kind of DIY and whack together. I've made one out of an old pallet, and they work fairly well in holding things together, and you can get in there and turn things really well, really easily. But I've heard some kōrero around that process of rotating or tilling your compost releases a lot of CO2, which of course is what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to create practices so that we sequester carbon into our soil, out of the atmosphere, and use lots of photosynthesizers to help us do that. And it's a lot less labor intensive to create no-turn static piles. But you have to be really intentional, and this is what I've done in our community garden, because I wanted this is not really an option that I would use at home to process my kai waste. This is what I would use if I want like premium delicious compost for growing highly nutritious kai. So really thinking about it like a lasagna with that green and brown layer, and we spent a lot of time collecting different types of greens and different types of browns. So we had the coffee chafing, we had the leaves, we soaked our leaves with a little bit of poos, we cut down some lupins, we cut down comfrey, we collected carding or seaweed, and spent a lot of time chopping that up into little pieces. This is something that I learned on my Earthworkers course with OMG and Kai Cycle, and the learnings there have been incredible. And you could probably put layers of kai in there if you had let them rot, say in a bokashi for a little while. I would be happy to add that in there. Yeah, I find this is complex stuff to try and relate, but again, go with your intuition, I think, and especially if you've been taught things by mentors that you trust, go with that too. This is just my learnings over the last little while.
Lani, there's a few more pātai that have come through the chat.
Yeah. Would you read them? I haven't figured out how to get back to the chat, and then
I can't remember what Kahurangi was up to. Kahurangi, do you remember what the last
19 messages.
And the last one was about the bokashi. Like, I can't remember. I think it was from Janine.
Pretty sure the bokashi support pathogen control in general is because for a time while it ferments, the pH drops to quite acidic level with pathogens that can't tolerate. Pretty sure exposing to oxygen is when this pH drops up again and becomes worm friendly. Oh, good one. Learned yesterday that bokashi is actually a pickling process, which is why it doesn't smell. Amazing stuff, brilliant. I have a tumbler compost at Kura that turns. It's pretty good, but awful to empty, would not recommend. There's all those practical things, as well as do you have access with a wheelbarrow to your big bays so that you can cart the compost where it needs to be taken? There's lots of things to consider. You can make your own bokashi zing at home too. Yes, I've heard that. Newspaper is good for this problem. Lime is good for getting rid of fruity flies too. Yeah. there's a certain smell that you can smell from your worm farms coming when something's not right. And then I just go, maybe a sprinkle of lime, or maybe some carbon. And then kind of by the next round, it sorts itself out. Yeah, lots of amazing resources online. Oh, Hungry Bin Owner's Manual, if anyone needs to check that out. A good trip for your Hungry Bin is to put an ice cream container under to catch the wheeze, then store in a milk bottle for use later. Oh, there's so many good kōrero happening. Coffee husk is excellent for carbon, easily accessible in urban environment, or chaff. Yes, good one, Michael. Yeah, that's kind of all that I've managed to throw together. Thank you all for sharing in your kōrero with me, and thank you for your time. Yeah, Jessica, pehea koe. Ka rongo koe kia hau? Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora e hoa. Ngā mihi mō tō kōrero, so much in there, and I think being so inspired about making compost, once you get the bugger, you get the bug.
Bug,
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Ka pai. Ngā he mihi anō kia koutou. Thank you, Lani, for the invitation to come and kōrero, and thank you all for your beautiful kōrero about all things soil and compost, and just sharing that real diversity of methods and thoughts, and that connection with your intuition in terms of, you know, go with your gut, yeah, because compost is the gut of the soil, and we want to kind of connect our health gut with the gut of the soil, and yeah, just beautiful. I think the thing for me that really always comes through when thinking about compost and microbes and biological diversity is diversity, and not just in the mata, not just in the microbes, but also too in how we think, and being able to kind of really expand our consciousness through the work that we're doing in the mata. And very much reminded of one of Vandana Shiva's books called Monocultures of the Mind, where she lays out that analysis of the impact that the modern industrial food system has created, and kind of really limiting our imaginations of what we could eat with regards to our food system, because it is so monocultured and so controlled. You know, 4 seed companies, agri-tech companies control the majority of the world's food supply on their food chain. So in terms of how global circuits operate, they can't really cope with diversity. So when we know that, we know we have to step outside of those types of economies and to create our own economy. So ngā mihi Lani, very inspired. We're at a little whānau food farm, and a few of you on the Zoom have been up here, called Papawhakaritorito. Oh, I can see a typo anyway. It's locked down, isn't it? I live up here with my wife, and my mum has built a house a couple of years ago on the farm. And so we're really looking to shifting our all of our food production onto the farm, into transitioning our into more of an energetic economy, where we can step outside of capitalism and outside of money, and kind of just move away into other ways of working. So I just thought I'd talk from our standpoint, which is really the only place that I can talk from when thinking about mahi one, elevating the mana of hini ahone, is really about thinking what we do here on our farm, Papawhakaritorito. And all of these photos are from this year, and actually they're all from about kind of a period of about 6 weeks ago, 6 to 8 weeks ago. And so I really wanted to start just by sharing a bit of a kōrero about Te Aotearoa, which is one of the Hua Para Kore kaupapa, and this idea of the woven universe that Māori Marsden talked about, because, you know, for us, we see our farm as a whole entity inside a cosmos, that is its whole entity inside a cosmos, inside a cosmos, inside a cosmos. And you can think of composting in the same way, actually, as its own little mini universe inside its own entity that's inside its own entity. And then you look down the stem of a flower or into a seed pod and you can see all of that sacred geometry. So for us, the land now, after using biodynamic preparations, really has its very own strong rhythmic vibration up on the farm. And we experience 4 seasons in one day. We had snow a few weeks ago up in the Mata around the house. This is just a photo just to give you an idea of what the farm looked like before we got here. So it's a bear paddock. It was used for grazing, really, mainly sheep and dairy. And this year we've had really massive floods. So successive flooding over 6 weeks. Got the Pakura River that runs through the farm, and we lost a paddock this year. We've been cutting fencing out of the river. And so the weather is just really unpredictable. Nothing is stable, nothing is constant. I think those conversations of, oh, we did it this time last year, it is all moving, you know, and it's like, how do we come into this full vibration of this kind of very chaotic weather situation that we live in to create resiliency around soil sovereignty and food sovereignty. This paddock down here that's completely flooded, we have an idea of doing some tropic food forest planting in there, and we're working with someone at the moment and pulling together a plan. But by crikey, I haven't seen it flood like that before. So then that just, you know, you observe that and then you think, okay, right, wetland plants, what do you need, you know? So just this idea of continually observing, and that's really what we need to do with compost as well. Okay, little buttons. And this is the Mata up at the house. So these are new beds that have just been put in. So my partner and her sister are also too doing the earthworkers course at Kai Cycle. And so every bit of grass that's around the house is now being transformed into gardens with all of these new ideas that whānau are coming home with. So these are just poplar logs that we've felled this year, and these are no-dig beds. We've just used shavings from calf rearing shed in there, off an organic farm. And then that's with a layer of sieved compost over it. So, you know, just really we're very mindful not to over-compost in the gardens. And so we're using a sieve often when we're definitely in the seed raising mix. But also too, if the gardens are lucky, we'll sieve through the compost as well. We're just about to put in a new Mata Kai, which is all of the black weed matting that's down there, and compost will be really important at the end point of that. So the things that we're just thinking about at the moment, and I'm very lucky to be working with Rory at Kai Cycle and with Lani, just so that we can think together and create, you know, really bring the Hua Para Kore principles into how we're going to create this new Mata here. So we're looking at feeding full-time about 5 people up on our farm. And so then what do we actually need, and what are the successions of the plantings that we need to do? And then, you know, when are we sowing seeds? So getting a little bit organised in my hodgepodge way of gardening, how I seem to have done it for the last many years. And so the purpose for us up here really is Kai sovereignty, but also to develop a teaching Mata, a Hua Para Kore teaching Mata, to help to grow the next generation of Māori food farmers from a kaupapa Māori standpoint. So earth workers, you know, organic market gardening, all of these courses are just so transformative and amazing. And they would be triply transformative if we could teach them from a kaupapa Māori perspective. If we can take the best of all of these things, kohi ngā mātauranga, keep them connected with the place that they come from, so that whakapapa connection is there, but actually teach our own people through our own tikanga and through our own mātauranga about how to grow biointensively. So it's more than just six broccolis from, you know, Mitre 10. It's actually how do we keep it going, and what's the plan that you need. And then for us, I haven't done this before, but I want to dedicate this mara to Hinea Hone. And that then requires me to have a think about what that actually means. And that's all part of expressing soil sovereignty for us up here. So I took these photos yesterday. This is the polytunnel, so shiny because we've cleaned it because it's in lockdown. So that's just got a whole lot of polycropping in there at the moment, and seeds are starting to come up at the back as well. And then even the other day, you know, only about a week ago, planting, you know, low growth wildflower mix on the edges in the polytunnel, and all those little seedlings have come up there, which I find very exciting. You know, just looking, and you know, I often spend probably too much time looking right down the centre of vegetables and things that we grow, but really curious about the shapes and the patterns and the spirals and the colours and the energetic connections from Hinea Hone, you know, all the way up into the cosmos. And what's our job as those mediators, as those food growers, as those composters. So broad bean seeds are up, and a whole lot of blue lupin as well. And these were only planted about only sowed these seeds about six weeks ago. And I'm surprised anything survived, because we've got chickens that are just Houdinis and escaping all the time. So this is what the compost looks like right now. You try not to apologise for how messy it looks, because it is a compost place of mahi. That big rectangular one is just, yeah, that's pretty hukari. That was just, we had a whole lot of stuff that needed cleaning up, so it was a really good thing to do. So it's got cow poo slurry, it's layering nitrogen and carbon, like Lani talked about. We'll turn that soon. Yeah, we'll turn that soon. The blue tarp with the wire mesh on it, that's really good compost, and we have just taken the bin off it and covered it up, because it was, we don't want it to get wet. And then we put 2 and 2 together the other day and realised that our compost beds piles were getting way too wet, even though we're covering them with tarps and with sacks. We've had so much rain out here. So we took those big, you know, 60-litre garden bins that you, home composting bins, the black ones, and we've now put that over our mature compost. It's got about 60 or 70 litres of that. And of course it's got a lid on it, and of course it's portable. I don't know why we've been looking at it for so long and didn't think that that would be a good use of that. So kind of thinking about how we store compost. So that compost now is ready to be sieved, and we are in seed sowing and, you know, growing up seedlings at the moment. So we'll sieve all of that into our seed raising mix composting. So just some whakaaro, you know, just around Māori food sovereignty. I often talk about it as the you know, opportunity to return to eat our cultural landscapes, which is really hard when the Crown's locked up 30% of Aotearoa in the conservation estate, and the Wildlife Act prohibits us from actually accessing our taonga kai within the conservation estate. But I hold that aspiration of being able to return to eat our cultural landscapes and to begin to decolonise our puku, you know, in the way that we gather, collect and prepare food. But it's also too, you know, I think about it as the practice of ensuring food secure futures for whānau, independent of multinational and national food systems and in harmony with Te Aotearoa. And this idea of stepping off the conventional and capitalist food system into a different food system. And I'm in awe of all of these amazing urban farmers and what's happening in Parihaka and all of you amazing people on the sui, because you're doing that, and that's just really inspiring. I think the other thing that I want to be really clear about is that for me, Māori food sovereignty has a big no-no to genetic modification. And this kōrero is popping back up again because we're talking about gene editing as a potential tool for, you know, predator management. And so Te Waka Kaiora, the National Māori Organics Group, we're actually an auxiliary claimant to the Y262 claim on genetic modification. So we're just very clear on that kaupapa, and it doesn't really, I actually did my PhD in this area. It doesn't really matter how many times the science is explained to you from different points of view, the answer is still, it's not acceptable, you know, no, e hara. And so that's just an absolute no-go for us. And I think the politics around Māori food sovereignty is keeping an eye on the radar around the things that you need to speak up against. 20 years ago, when we were speaking up against it, there were a lot more Māori vocal about being anti-GE. And now I see, which I find quite scary, back in that position of, oh, let's have a debate, we need to talk about it. It's like, well, no, we don't need to talk about it. Comes from the deep, you know, it comes from the depths of the capitalist food system and the depths of the power and capitalist control of the seed and the agri-tech companies. So for me, there is just no conversation there. And then in terms of soil sovereignty, thinking about how we can elevate the mana of Hine Ahone. You know, if we really elevated the mana of Hine Ahone, how then do we tread on the whenua? How then do we rake our hands through the compost? You know, what do we need to do to elevate the mana of Hine Ahone? And for example, you know, as with the Te Awa Whanganui and the Urewera, both being given personhood status to elevate their mana in their own right as their own entity. What if we were to do the same thing with soil, with Hine Ahone, and to honour the divine right of the divine being that she is and give her personhood status so she can be protected, because she's being literally ripped up and bulldozed apart all around the motu. And so the work of composting, yes, it's about growing microbes and all those awesome things that we want to do, but I think it's also too really important healing work for us to do in, you know, it's a rongoa. And so, you know, to really feel that, to really feel that. I think also too, in terms of soil sovereignty, to locate soil within this complex woven universe, you know, she is one part, and we know this through whakapapa kōrero, she's one part, she's one whanaunga in the complex web of relationships. So just to keep that front and centre, so that we're not talking about Hine Ahone outside of Rongomatane, outside of Tangaroa, but we're having that te ao turoa, that ngā atua view on things, which Para Kore does so well. And I'm not going to read out that quote there, but it's just a quote from the recent book that came out last year in lockdown. What I love about the soil book is that it elevates really, really, really diverse kōrero from really diverse people around the motu. And this is this idea of breaking through those monocultures of the mind. There isn't one Māori way to think about Māori soil sovereignty or Māori food sovereignty. It's not one Māori way to think about Hine Ahone. It's really important kōrero and mātauranga to connect with and to understand and to be in conversation and to wānanga with others about, so that we can develop our own interpretations and then embody it and feel it in practice, so it doesn't just become something that's really theoretical. So I just lost myself here. So last slide. One of the things that I'm continuing to do is still doing kaupapa Māori research, and really interested in, you know, working with others to create a course up on the farm that can grow kaupapa Māori, Hua Para Kore food farmers for whānau in a way where it's more than just 6 broccolis or 6 cabbages. Those things are a great start, but, you know, let's up the transformation here. So no rere te whānau Para Kore, he kaupapa tino rawa atu, mihi atu kia koutou. Kia ora Lani for the opportunity to kōrero with your awesome whānau.
Tēnā koe moto kōrero, teitei, pono tika. I always enjoy listening to your kōrero. I really, really appreciate your time here with us. It was actually in my first year of uni I came across your name in some papers, and I was like, wow. And then my beautiful mate Tina gifted me your puka puka about this time last year, and I just was like, this is what I'm thinking in my head. This is where I want to be. And so to be working alongside Para Kore and all my amazing colleagues here, yeah, dream come true. I always appreciate our kōrero around this being a spiritual practice and a healing practice. I cannot emphasize this enough, especially for people on the beginning of their journeys. It only gets buzzier as you reconnect with our taiao. I had this incredible moment during Rākau Nui, and I sat outside and I could hear the wind whisper through the harakeke, and I knew it was my tupuna. I just knew it was, because I have many tupuna on both my sides who were growers, and it was my nanny who brought that harakeke from Ruatoki to plant here because she was a weaver. And so my mara connects me to Hine Ahuone and our whakapapa tua atua, and also connects me to my tupuna. And this is our whānau homestead, so hoping that there will be something for iri to come. Anyway, we have a little bit of time to share. I was wondering if anyone wanted to share about any cool kaupapa that are happening in your rohe, or any pānui that you think would be worth sharing on here while we're all collected with this amazing group of people, or just chuck any socials in the chat, because I'd be keen to find out about more of various different people's mahi. Yeah, so if you did want to share something, just unmute yourselves and share. If not, bye.
Just really got inspired to really, you know, not only the 6 broccoli and the 6 cauliflowers, because we've got a whole lot of land at the back that's just sort of almost bare. It's only got sheep on it, so we also grow our own meat, and in summertime our own vegetable, and your poly grow and a tunnel, because, you know, my goal would be to have more all year round supplies for myself and my whānau. For now it sort of goes from November through to March, but then also when the garden dies, I was saying to someone the other day, I die with it, and it's okay, because then my season is over as well, and I enjoy that whole not breathing for myself. And then now the springtime comes and I feel the excitement of, oh, I can't wait. And yeah, I've got the first flowers on my apricot tree this year after 5 years, so I'm like, woo! Anyway, so yeah, I'm inspired. I really need to turn that land into something productive for me and others. Yeah, Lani, hey. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Mama.
Bye-bye.
And I just wanted to say thank you. It was a really good talk, and I've read some of your books, Jessica, and they're so inspiring. And at my school, because I'm a year 13 student, I've been setting up a compost system at my school, which is going pretty well. So we're just getting the next, like year 12s and stuff, getting on board, so it continues. And next month for Organic Week, I'm running a biodynamic workshop. So yeah.
Oh, you're fabulous. What awesome mahi. That sounds so inspiring. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, wicked. Incredible.
Kia ora tata, that was an amazing kōrero from both of you, Lani and Jessica. Jessica, a couple of years ago when we listened to your kōrero at Orongo Mai Marae in the Hutt Valley at the Para Kore Hui, you talked about the Hua Para Kore movement, and how when Percy passed away, you know, things were sort of put into hiatus a bit. I just wondered where things are at now in terms of the movement. Is there plans to kickstart things? Are things looking up in terms of for example, us at the Pariaka Community Garden? Are there opportunities for us to work more with you around certification, or I suppose where are things are at with Hua Para Kore? Kia ora, Jessica.
Oh yeah, kia ora. Thank you for that, Pārtai. That's beautiful. Yes, things are different, I can report, so that's fabulous. So got a website, Te Waka Kaiora, so just Google it. We've got an AGM coming up in 3 or 4 weeks, and these things are, I don't know, they're never easy, are they, in community organisations, getting all audited accounts and charities commissions and da-da-da-da-da. It's like you spend so much time doing the paperwork, you're not actually doing the mahi. And we're just about getting the Hua Para Kore certification system up, but we need a hand. We need to create regional reps. We need people in different rohi to help spread it and to grow it. And that was always Percy's vision. It happened in communities and in areas. So what Lani and I are going to do in Whanganui Atara is we're going to cook something up, Lani? We're going to activate something and see if we can connect up with other marae in the rohi around here, and just start a little hub in Wellington, where people can gather and we can kind of grow the Hua Para Kore kaupapa. So would love to do that in Parihaka, and Pounamu's up there too, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Just looking at your website, looks mean, looks epic. I'll sign up for the newsletter right now. Thank you.
Oh yeah, awesome. And the other thing is we planned a hui, which some of you may know about, I think the 9th, 10th and 11th of September. And the Friday day hui was an all-day Te Waka Kaiora hui to kind of restart the organisation. But obviously it's all changed now in lockdown. But we will pānui those that out again. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I can share the website in the chat. That's a good idea. A little link. What a beautiful way to spend the afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Any last whakaaro to share? And then I think we might. Is Te Kawa around? If not, I'll close us off. And we'll be on our way. Dinner time. Another busy day in lockdown. Yeah. Me kare kia tātou. Unuhia ki te uritapu nui kia wātea kia māma te ngākau. Te wairua ki te arataka tū. Ko ia rā I rongo whakairihia ake ki runga. Kia tina. Hie tā kie.
Ai kie.
Ai kie.
Take care.